coming off that Rams game. There was some intrigue going into it. I had Ben Gessling, our colleague, on late last week to kind of like talk through the rumors that the Vikings wanted to trade for Stafford. It was kind of ridiculous. Ben was able to bat that down pretty easily, but it did bring up a larger discussion of the trade deadline, which brings me to my 3 hot takeaways before we get into too deep into the film. Number 1, Andrew, I don't think this team should do anything at the deadline. They made a minor move to get Cam Akers. I don't believe enough in this team that they should be doing anything more dramatic stuff, taking away from future draft picks, things like that, to try to make this club better. I just don't think they quite have it this year, even if they started 5-0.
Yeah, and as we all talk about so much, they don't have the draft resources. They've got
No.
1 first-round pick, 2 fifth-round picks. Maybe they'll get a comp pick or 2 coming up here in the middle rounds. But yeah, Mike, they just don't have the resources to go out and shell for help right now mid-season, and nor does this team look like it's just a piece or 2 away. You just lost Christian Darrisaw to a torn ACL, MCL for the season. That's a brutal blow to a team that has a quarterback that is prone to turnovers. We've seen strip sacks. We've seen interceptions already. The decision-making is something they have to manage. And now he doesn't have that trusted blindside blocker that to Darnold probably means a lot more than it would a mobile, more confident set quarterback, even like a Brock Purdy in San Francisco. With Darnold, that is going to affect him. And so I think you're right. I think this is a team that we've seen over the last 2 weeks. When you see an offense or 2 offenses that are humming, that are like playoff caliber, all pro talent, in terms of the wide receivers and the running back and the quarterback, you see how this Vikings defense can be picked apart when those quarterbacks have time. And so I just think they're not 1 or 2 pieces away. However, what they could do at the trade deadline is still acquire a Hawkinson type piece. If they went out there and they saw there's a guy out there that we want for the next 5 years, yes, that would be worth the move. But you just don't have the draft capital right now. Are you willing to move a 1, which they didn't even have to move for TJ Hawkinson? Who would that have to be? It would have to be such a premier top level player that I just don't know if that's something teams are even looking to do right now. You see the Titans saying Jeffrey Simmons, one of their top defensive tackles, who came to Minnesota in joint practices not that long ago and just dismantled the Vikings O-line. They know how good he is. He might be worth that pick, but the Titans are telling national reporters, we're not moving him. There's no way. So I think there's guys out there that you'd love to just dream scenario, plug and play. Yes, let's Madden franchise mode and put this guy here in the big hole in this team. But it takes two teams. And in terms of who's actually available, I don't think the Vikings have the resources to go out and get them, nor do I think they're in a situation that, like you said, that they're not really a situation where you're a rental or 2 away.
That brings me to my second hot takeaway. I'm worried about, and this maybe kind of dovetails into what you were just talking about, I'm worried about a reckoning at cornerback in 2025 because all 3 of the guys they've been playing all year this year, while they've been generally good, the last couple of games notwithstanding, they're all free agents, they're all veterans. Like that's the kind of move you could see if you can get a player and a little bit of capital back if you're trading a 1. But I'm worried about corner long-term, Andrew, and I feel like beyond this season, I don't see what the plan is.
Well, long-term, you should be. Yeah, long-term, it's Mekhi Blackmon, who's unfortunately suffered the torn ACL in training camp, and we never got to see him his second year, but he was so good as a rookie, 3rd-round pick, that they view him as being a future starter. That's it. In terms of who's signed beyond this year, they really like Byron Murphy, who they could re-sign, but that's an if at this point. Right now, it's Mekhi Blackmon, a Caleb Evans under contract. I mean, that's about it. And Stephon Gilmore, you mentioned, Shaq Griffin, those guys are on 1-year deals. Shaq Griffin, who has been really good before in Seattle, he's had moments. And he's had moments here in Minnesota, but he was really bad at times in that Rams game. He got beat for a deep touchdown by Demarcus Robinson earlier on that drive. He got beat by Tutu Atwell in a different type of zone coverage where he just didn't have the good feel and the depth to take away that pass. He wasn't very good. And when you have a smart head coach and Sean McVay who comes in and says, I'm going to make these old guys in the secondary try to tackle Puka Nacua, try to tackle Cooper Kupp. Here's 10 screens right out of the gate. Here's a bunch of quick passes, mitigate your pressure, make your old guys tackle. That was the game plan. And future teams are going to try to do that to less success than the Rams had, because obviously the Rams have the talent to attack you there. But the Colts might walk in on Sunday and be like, here's 10 screens to Josh Downs. Try to corral him 10 times if you're Stephon Gilmore. Because Stephon Gilmore is really good at covering. He's really good at deflecting, anticipating. At 34, 35 years old, he's not the best perimeter run defender. He's not the best force tackling defender at this point. You don't want to put a ton on his body. So that's a long-winded way of saying you should be very concerned about the long-term outlook at corner. And then short-term, how they need to get more out of those guys is exactly what we saw the first 5 weeks. It's pressure. It's forcing quarterbacks not to be comfortable back there in the pocket and delivering wherever they want to. And if you need to spread out and stop playing so deep and off to take away some of the perimeter stuff, those are the counter moves that Brian Flores has to come up with now to figure out how do you adjust your coverages if teams are just going to throw quick and underneath and try to set up these kinds of blockades for their wide receivers on the outsides.
Final one, Andrew. I got not a battle on Twitter the other day. I don't really get into Twitter battles. I try to maintain a level head, but I tweeted that Jordan Addison's been awful this season. I got half people saying yes, I agree. I got half people saying no, Sam Darnold's just not getting him the ball. What is that? So that's my take. What's your take on Jordan Addison, whose numbers this year? I think he's got 14 catches in 4.5 games, 23 targets. Doesn't seem like he's been a factor to me. It seems like he's regressed to a little bit this year, at least production wise. What's your take on his second season?
Yeah, we've definitely seen a regression production wise from him. And I think what you haven't seen is the total progression in the second season to being a guy who you can trust to not make a ton of mistakes. And when you see him make those 2 penalties, procedural stuff against the Lions, those are the kind of mistakes where, yes, it's rare for him. That doesn't usually happen to him. But in critical moments, division opponent in his second year, you don't expect that to happen twice. And he just kind of had the head not being in the game, lack of focus issues there. As a wide receiver, he is still very good. This guy is still absolutely the first round pick who caught 10 touchdowns last year. He's a deep threat. He has an incredible ability to track the ball. He's good in contested catch situations. He is not the most physical. He's slight. He can get bullied around. And you also saw a bad moment in that Lions game where 3rd and 4, they need a first down to run the clock out. And Addison just kind of gets boxed in by Amik Robertson, a very physical Lions corner, who's not the greatest corner, but he tried to get his hands on Addison and did. And Addison couldn't get out of the way of Justin Jefferson, of that target to Justin Jefferson that was overthrown there. And Sam's never said it. Coaches have only alluded to it. Kevin O'Connell alluded that Addison was in the way of that pass. So there's weaknesses you're seeing and the lack of focus compounding how bad he's looking. I also think Sam Darnold doesn't trust him a ton to just, like Justin Jefferson style, fire contested passes into his windows, much like Kirk Cousins seemingly trusted right out of the gate. Kirk Cousins, again, I'm not saying he's better physically than Sam Darnold. He's not, but he is very comfortable and confident in what he can do and what he can get out of wide receivers. And you saw him immediately pick that up with Jordan Addison. That first training camp. I didn't see that this training camp. I haven't seen that this year with Sam Darnold. I haven't seen that confidence. The only time we're seeing Addison catch passes from Sam Darnold seem to be these out routes along the sideline where there's just enough window to get the ball in there and it's not really contested at all. You haven't seen it over the middle. You haven't seen it in spots where you think Addison can catch and run. And those are the times where Addison can really shine as a player, where his skills can really transcend. And so I think part of it's the quarterback. I think part of it is the wide receiver losing focus when he's not in the game. So you're just seeing this all kind of lead to lack of production for Jordan. However, I would pause to say he's been awful. I think this is part of you mentioned this before we started recording, but this is not a high volume passing offense like it used to be. So the targets are going to be down for everybody, and including for him, based on what we're used to seeing, at least when Justin Jefferson wasn't playing last year. Addison was easily wide receiver one.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say he's been awful. I just think that all the circumstances combined lead you to wanting more from him.